Welcome back, high school hockey fans. It's another edition of This Week in Wisconsin Prep Hockey. I'm Mike Hammett along with Del Scanlon and Bill Berg Jr., and we have a guest tonight, Tony Menard. And Tony, thank you very much for taking time out of your Sunday night and joining us.
Yeah, well, thank you guys very much for having me on the show. Very excited to talk to you guys.
First, congratulations, Chippewa Falls Menominee's first trip to the state tournament. I keep catching myself. I keep trying to say first trip to Madison. I've been doing it for 3 days now. But no, first trip to the state tournament. How do the girls feel coming out of what is probably easily considered the most brutal sectional in the state?
Relieved, I think. And a lot of excitement. Going into the season, we knew it was going to be a tough road to try to get to the state tournament. And as the season progressed, just seeing how, everyone was just taking turns beating up on each other in our section, in our conference. And we knew that, we might not get the seed that we necessarily wanted, but once we got into the tournament, we knew that no matter what, we had a chance. And I think any of the top 4 teams in our section, I don't think anybody was going to be surprised if they made it out of our section just because of how well everyone was playing all year. And it came down to who was going to be able to be consistent for about a week and a half. And, fortunate for us, that was us this year. And it's our first time as a program with Chippewa's Menominee going to state. I know the High McDonald Co-op went back to, or was at state in 07 and 08 and had a couple nice teams. But ever since we joined a co-op with Menominee back in 2010, this is our first trip with them. So everyone's really excited. It was a goal of ours at the beginning of the season to get to this point. And we're definitely happy to be here. But we definitely want to make sure that, Wednesday's not going to be our last game. And we want to make it to, that state championship appearance.
I thought you made a good point there, Tony, when you said that the most consistent hockey for a week and a half. That's a pretty good way of looking at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you trying to get a read on the season just by looking at scores across the state or just in the section or conference. It was tough because, you go beat a team and then they turn around and then they lose to a team that you thought they were going to beat, or they beat a team that you thought they were going to lose to. And you're like, what's going on this year? And I think just with the roller coaster year that it's been with COVID-19 and, the different protocols and, trying to navigate through all that, people were going to have off days. Teams were going to have off days. And it really, once you got into the tournament, you had to find a way to be consistent. And, that was just our message for, leading up into the playoffs.
Now, Tony, I think you played the Storm one time this year, and it was late December when you played them. How has your team changed since then? And I don't know what you've seen of the Storm since then, but how are things advanced for both teams?
For us, I'd like to say that we're playing a little bit better defensively. I know obviously we gave up 4 goals against the Fusion today, but besides that, being able to hold Western Wisconsin to really 1 goal for the majority of the game and shut Ellie Bryce down, who, is arguably one of the top senior forwards in the state. We really were focusing on playing a good defensive style of hockey game. And we were able to do that. Same thing against Hayward, being able to get a shutout there. So right now we've been playing pretty good hockey in our D zone and not giving up a lot of opportunities through the neutral zone and giving teams rushes. And we've been capitalizing on our shots. We necessarily haven't been getting the most shots on net, but we've been taking advantage of the ones that we do get, making sure we get people to the, in front for those rebounds, and just really playing a solid 51 minutes of hockey this time of year goes a long way. And on top of it, to have good goaltending, that it just helps you feel confident, for the whole game. And so, we're going to have to watch some film on Central Wisconsin just because we haven't seen them since late December. So they're obviously a different team. Things are, they're coming off of, I think they had to be shut down for a couple of weeks due to COVID. So that was their first game back. So we're expecting to see a completely different team. We know that we're going to have to work really hard. They're going to be a well-coached team. And we're going to just have to find a way to, capitalize on some opportunities and make sure that we limit our mistakes as much as we can in that game.
Yeah, the last time you played them, they had a 16-day layoff. They were December 12th to December 28th without a game. When you're looking at film on another team, how much does your game strategy change from team to team when you're playing against them?
Honestly, it depends on what the film looks like, and if we see a couple girls on their team that are really controlling their how that team's playing, we're going to go into it and really try to find a way to limit those players' opportunities. So that, for instance, like what we did against Western Wisconsin, we really tried to have our centers just shadow Ellie pretty much the whole game, and understand that I think we wanted to try to win that game kind of almost on a 4-on-4 hockey basis and just take Ellie out of the picture. So it depends on the type of team we're playing, but obviously you want to look at power play, penalty kill, those type of situations, and see if you can pick up on what they're trying to do and how you can defend it to the best of your team's ability.
That's something that I'm often surprised you don't see more of in girls hockey. Given the state of girls hockey right now, it's better in Wisconsin than it's ever been, but there's generally still, the top teams still have like one or two really, really dominant players. Like the Storm, last time they played the Fox City Stars, they lost 5-1. Michaela Zilish had 4 goals. This time in the sectional final, now the Storm won 5-1. Michaela Zilish had 1 goal on a power play. They managed to shut her down, and that kind of shut down the whole workings. I'm just surprised that doesn't happen. You don't key off on those top players more often. Not necessarily you, but just girls hockey in general.
Oh yeah, you see that with almost all the teams across the state. They're very heavy on 2 to 3 girls on the team that are girls that are probably playing a lot of hockey, getting a lot of minutes. So if you can find a way to limit their ability to be effective during the hockey game, that's how your teams are going to be successful. And right now too, you see teams that at this point in the game in the playoffs, you have to be able to find a way to use all 3-4 lines that you have available. You're just not going to be able to get by running 2 lines, and you're just not going to have any energy come the third period. And this year we've been able to utilize more of our depth than we have in years past, which has made a huge difference. And our girls are fresher in the third period in crucial points of the game where a lot of teams haven't been able to have that luxury so far.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to matter how much conditioning you do. It's really hard to get by with 2 lines.
Yeah, just unless you're on a fast sheet of ice that's cold and you're used to playing there. But outside of that, you got to find a way to develop your whole program and try to get as much playing time from as many lines as you possibly can. And obviously, you understand that given different situations in the game, really dictates how you roll your lines out and whether you get last change or not. And so there's a chess game always going on between the coaches and the game. And you always got to hope that your girls are ready no matter what line they're out there against, and hopefully take advantage of any opportunities that they get.
Well, I've got some breaking news for you. This hasn't crossed the WIA yet, but I just got an email from Everest Youth Hockey saying that there had to be a schedule change on Wednesday because the Central Wisconsin Storm state semifinal will be played on Wednesday at Greenheck Fieldhouse in DC Everest. So
yeah, I think I just saw my athletic director was going to text me that too. So, well, we know where we're playing at least.
Yeah, you'll be playing on the Olympic size sheet at Greenheck Fieldhouse. Ice skate there twice a week. Soft ice, big sheet. That's what that one is.
Tony, how does that big sheet favor you, or does it give you a disadvantage?
Both. It's looking at the sheet itself. Obviously, it's wider, and that's probably going to be the biggest difference. Is just the amount of more ice that you have. Offensively, I think it helps us because we have, I like our lines and the depth that we have on offense this year. But defensively, it changes kind of some angles up for the defenseman coming in on rushes. It changes the angles for the goaltender. in net. So, now that we know where we're playing, we can try to practice and, get ready for that as the best that we can. And, no matter what, you got to line up and play the team across from you. So, the ice rink, the sheet that we're playing on, that's out of our hands at this point. We're happy to be at the state tournament and just got to find a way to, give it our best effort and, figure out ways to, strategize with the practices that we have the next couple days to try to prepare for that.
We've asked every coach we've had on this year about, what they've had to do dealing with COVID for this high school hockey season. Obviously, you're a co-op, which is something we haven't really dealt with in that conversation. How does it work having to deal with multiple schools when it comes to having players available to play for you?
Yeah, no, to start the season, with our co-op being based, or the host school being Chippewa Falls, and Menominee and McDonald both were in school at the time when the season started, and their winter sports were actually started the earliest that you could possibly do it, and Chippewa Falls hadn't started yet. So based off of us being Chippewa Falls being the host school, it pushed our program back. I think we started December 7th. So from there, we had planned to have a couple games in by that point. So at the beginning of the year, I think it was more challenging. Once we got, rolling, got everybody in the locker room, things kind of started to feel a little bit more normal. But, we have the protocol where we try to limit the number of girls in the locker room at one time. Everybody's got their mask on. We're doing the, COVID screenings each and every day. And, just trying to do the best, with their cleaning and, keeping up on, making sure the girls are healthy. If they have any type of symptom, we just say, hey, just stay home until, you're sure you don't have, COVID. That way, we're not putting the rest of the team in jeopardy. And, so far, knock on wood, we haven't had a lot of issues at all. And we've been able to get majority of our schedule in with the, couple snow days that we had that postponed some games.
And I watched many sectional finals this last weekend, but in one of them, in the last couple minutes of the game, a player was thrown off the ice twice on a face-off. He had to go back to the bench, and another player came up because his mask was down around his chin instead of over his face. How do you impress on your team that when you line up, your stuff needs to be where it needs to be, or the ref's going to throw you out? Because that was a 1-goal game, and one of this team's best players got thrown off the ice on consecutive face-offs.
Well, we have they're called game on masks from CCM, and they just attach right to our helmets and our face masks. So when we're out on the ice, there's really no room for that to slide down. I know when the girls get back to the bench, they can kind of pull it down and get a drink of water and pull it back up. But outside of that, when they're on the ice, we really don't have a lot of issues with that. We have girls that got approved to have the bubble masks with the vents covered up on the bottom. So, we've gotten through so far this season without having any real mask issues. The one issues we have seen a couple times just with the new rules change is, if there's a scrum in the corner and the puck's not moving for a couple of seconds, they'll just blow it dead and, get the girls away from each other and then just drop the puck. So outside of that, for us, our games have been going pretty smooth without a lot of impact from the COVID aspect.
Well, that's good to hear.
You had enough of masks yet, Tony?
Yeah, I mean, going out in the stores, it's hard on the bench, for sure, being a coach, because you want to try to, sometimes you want to help the girls out while they're on the ice, and you just can't project your voice through that mask very well. So that probably makes it the most difficult. And even coming back to the bench, as you're coaching and you're talking and your heart rate's up, it definitely gets tough to breathe sometimes, or get a good breath in and get your words out effectively. But we're 20 games in, 19 games in now at this point, and we're feeling pretty comfortable with what we need to do to make sure that that continues.
I was gonna say, MJ, I was wearing my mask today in a non-mask situation just because I was out shoveling in -3 weather and I didn't want to find my scarf, so I just put my mask on. It kept my face nice and warm.
Yeah, that's a pretty good idea because it was cold out there today.
Tony, this season, of course, we all know it's been a little difficult. Now we're near the end of the season with the state tournament and everything, but during that week, you guys also have your girls' banquet. And this year, of course, with the COVID regulations, you've mentioned that you guys are going to be doing it virtual. Explain how that's kind of affecting things a little bit.
Yeah, it's obviously a different, it's not ideal. Going to state, making it to state is such an honor and something these players and coaches, we work so hard for to try to get to these moments. And, you want to try to keep the integrity of what the state tournament really means to everyone. And, part of that is going to the banquet and being honored as a team and having the all-state girls being honored for the great season that they had. So as a coaches association, we sat down and talked and tried to figure out how we can best, try to keep it still, something special for these kids. So Tuesday night at 6:30, we're going to have our virtual banquet for the all-state awards, the all-state team or the teams that made it to state, where the coaches will be able to talk and, celebrate their teams and then go over the all-state awards, the Miss Hockey Awards, the award, and the Coach of the Year award.
Now, is like all 22 players from each team going to be on that Zoom? Is it going to be a 110-person Zoom call, or?
I think so. We're running through Google Meet, and I think hopefully our plan is to kind of go in our locker room. We have a pretty nice setup in Chippewa Falls where we can spread out in our locker room, and we'll pull it up on the screen so everybody can watch it at the same time. And so hopefully the teams that are making it to state will find a way to be able to do that. But if not, then they'll hopefully be able to jump on, and I think we should have enough capacity for the amount of people that are going to try to join.
So they're catering in steak and lobster for all the teams so they can have the banquet?
Yeah, I wish we could. Obviously, the whole eating around each other is a tough subject right now, especially, this fall we had a local team, I think, that got traced or had an outbreak on their team because they were eating on the bus. So it's anything that we can do to limit anytime the mask is coming down, we try to do that. But, if we're going to end up eating or, if we're on a road trip, we've had girls bring sandwiches, and we just ask the host school if we can sit in the bleachers before we get on the bus and, try to spread out the best we can. So always trying to find ways to make the best of just the tough times it is. And, the girls have been really on board with it all season. And it, really started with our athletic departments at all three schools really, laying down some good guidelines and helping us try to navigate through this and help us just kind of keep our feet on the ground and focus on coaching rather than all the stuff behind the scenes that has to do with COVID.
So, for those of our fans who aren't aware, how does, you guys are the third seed this year at the tournament. How does this seeding meeting work on Sunday morning after the finals have been played?
So the seeding meeting started at 9 this morning. We get in there, and Tom Shafransky kind of gives his spiel for the seed meeting, kind of how what determining factors should be looked at when ranking the teams. And then we all, 4 coaches, get a chance to state what seed they feel that they are deserving of. And once all the coaches have a chance to talk about, their team and what they feel they deserve, then we submit votes via email, and then they tally the votes and the team. So you would vote, and you can't vote for yourself. So you only really are voting for 3 teams at this point, and where they should fall. And so once that happens, then we see where the votes fall and, where everything lays out. And, that's, and then once those votes come in, you know where you're at. If you don't like your spot, then you can try to appeal up, and then you go through the process of an appeal vote.
Those are always fun.
And when you have 4 teams in the median, and there's 2 people that are trying to appeal for a certain position, and then there's only 2 other teams that can vote, you really can't break a tie. So
you may want to bring a legal team with you.
Yeah, so it makes it interesting. I don't know if it's necessarily the best way to go about it, but at least we're trying to place teams in a spot where you award going through the playoffs, your regular season, and it definitely helps the state situation a little bit more. And usually on a given year, it's not too big of a deal because we're in Madison and you're just really trying to get the last change for the most part, being the home team on the higher seed. But, this year it had a little bit more of a impact because those 2 higher seeds got a home game for the state semifinal games.
Yeah, that's a tough thing to do. Like you said, most years, especially 2-3. 2-3 is not a huge deal. It's just last change. 1-4 is more of a big deal. But this year, it's a home game for those teams, except for Superior. Superior will be playing in Spooner, their secondary home, I guess. But it's tough.
When you think about this, Tony, you look at it. I mean, in each division, there's 4 teams left. In the girls' division, there's 4 teams left. The difference between seed 1 and seed 4, you would think at this point probably isn't a whole lot different between the 4 at this point.
No, there really isn't. And when we were talking and trying to give our, why we deserve a higher seed or whatnot, we all had really strong cases at this point. I mean, you look at USM, I think, coach was talking how I think they've won 15 games in a row or something like that, which, is a really great feat in and of itself. And then you look at us and, we go through the hardest section, at one point or when we finish the season, all our 4 conference teams in the BRC are all ranked in the top 6 coaches poll. And, you add Western Wisconsin into that mix, it's a tough section to go through. And then you look at section 2, where you had Fox Cities, Central Wisconsin, Northland Pines was playing good hockey. So, I mean, it really, a lot of teams had to play good hockey to get where they're at. Eau Claire playing Wisconsin Valley Union into overtime. So, once we got to this point, you really have to try to look at head-to-head games as a determining factor and like opponents and go from there. So.
All right. I think that's all the questions we've got for Tony tonight. Anything else, MJ or Del?
No, I just want to wish Tony best of luck. And really, I've never met you before, but I've really enjoyed listening to you talk. And best of luck against the Storm, okay?
Yeah, I appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much for all you guys do to cover hockey, cover girls hockey around the state. I know a lot of people definitely go through your website and find all the articles that you guys pull from local newspapers, whatever it might be, your guys' own articles. It's a really great thing and great thing for high school hockey in Wisconsin.
Well, congratulations, Coach. Hopefully next year we'll be back in the rinks and be able to see you guys a little more often. Good luck this week.
Yeah, thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, Tony Menard talking about his Chippewa Falls Menominee Sabers in the state tournament, taking on the Central Wisconsin Storm.
All right, now let's talk about the state tournament.
Yep.
We'll start with Division 2 in the boys. Fond du Lac Springs, St. Mary's Springs, I call them because that's their actual name, but we keep asking their coaches, hey, can we rename you on the site? And they keep saying, no, leave it how it is. St. Mary's Springs takes on Somerset, the 1 and the 4, and then Superior and Lakeland, the 2 and 3. Springs returned just about their whole team that won the state championship last year, and then Somerset is back from last year. They lost their best player, Bodie Smith. He graduated, but they brought back AJ Simpkins and the other kid who I really like, whose name I just suddenly forgot.
That Somerset
Antonio Gomez.
That Somerset Ram game to be able to get for Somerset to advance to this state semis. That was a heck of a game. Final 2-1. And how many shots were in there? There's close to 80 shots between the two goalies' face.
Between the two goalies, it was very close to 80 shots. I think it was, if I can see exactly how many it was 76 shots were taken in that game. 3 goals were scored. Caleb Bentz for Somerset stopped 34 of 35 for a .971 save percentage, and Alex Erickson of Ram stopped 39 of 41 for a .951 save percentage. So the goalies stood on their heads in that one.
Listening to the announcers, the game-winning goal by Somerset was heartbreaking, and Erickson really took it hard on the ice after the goal went in. But at that point, you facing that many shots and everything else, that's a heck of a game. And either team that lost it, it's going to be a tough loss.
Yep. So last year in the opening round, Somerset faced Pines, and Rice Lake played Fond du Lac. I believe that's the way it went. So this year, Somerset gets their shot at Springs, and then on the bottom, Lakeland and Superior get to play. That was the only seed that I got wrong in my predictions. I had Lakeland at 2 and Superior at 3. Someone on Twitter asked me why Superior instead of Lakeland, and I said that those two teams were basically a toss-up. They've played the fewest games of the 4 teams in the tournament. Somerset's played 23. Springs got in all 24 regular season games. Superior had 12 and Lakeland had 14. They have only one common opponent, Amory, who they both beat by 3. So at that point, Superior and Lakeland is a toss-up. And at that point, if it's a toss-up, you go with tradition when you're voting. So Superior is the 2 and Lakeland is the 3. That should be a heck of a game. But there's so little to go off of. There's no common opponents. Obviously, Somerset and Springs, we saw them at the tournament last year. We know what they're about for the most part. Lakeland and Superior, that's a tough one. Lakeland I know they're a very talented team, but I also know they take a lot of penalties. Superior likes to fall behind 2-0 and then come back to win because they did that both against New Richmond and Rice Lake. So, I mean, if we're going to predict it, I'm going to predict that Lakeland is going to jump out to a 2-0 lead, and then somehow Superior is going to come back and tie it and probably win on a power play.
Well, I know that when we were looking at sectional 2, we were saying that any of those top 4 teams had a chance to come out of there, and Rhinelander, ended up finishing the season sweep over Northland Pines to make it to that sectional final game. Lakeland knocked off Mosinee, and then Lakeland comes up with a nice win to make it to the state semis.
Yeah, and for Lakeland's part, Mosinee was a team they had lost to twice. So that shows growth on their part to get past Mosinee. Rhinelander, I believe they had beaten in their previous meetings. I would have to go, or they only met them once. I'd have to go back and look. But yeah, that was a good game. One of the athletic directors among those 4 teams told me that, Lakeland is the most talented of those 4 teams, but they also take a lot of penalties, and it hurts them. So they'll have to watch out for that. In Spooner, I want to say I wanted to say in Madison, then I wanted to say in Superior, but those are both wrong. It's in Spooner.
With that style of play, I agree, Junior. That might be a knockdown drag-out between Lakeland and Superior this year.
Now,
Superior plays that tougher. Sorry, Del. Superior plays that tougher schedule up there in the Minnesota, and if Lakeland is what this person said, then these 2 teams are going to knock heads pretty good.
Now, on the other side of the bracket, we've got Springs and Somerset. Springs, has been the Division II runaway number 1 all year long, defending state champs. And Somerset, I believe they were the number 2 seed in their sectional, and came out of there with the win. Hayden Rising, Now you've gotten to see him a few times this year, watching the video and everything. Talk about him a little bit.
He's never as big as I expect him to be. Generally speaking, for goalies that have those kind of numbers, they're generally bigger. Although that's not always true at the high school level. He's not as big as I expected him to be, but his biggest skill is that he's always where he's supposed to be. You watch them play, and he's always where he's supposed to be, and that's 90% of goaltending is being where you're supposed to be. When you see, not always the case, but when you see guys flopping around and making wild saves, it's generally because they ended up out of position. He follows the puck incredibly well and moves across the crease incredibly well. He came in as a freshman last year and put up big numbers. And I'd like to say it's because he has to practice with Brady Welsh and Noah Pickert, who are just ridiculously fast. But he's a sophomore this year and they're seniors, so he did not play with them in youth hockey. He was in the group behind them. So their speed did not contribute to him following the puck that well. But I think that's his biggest strength. He follows the puck incredibly well and he moves very well. When it comes to like how quick a goalie is making saves and stuff, that's not something I can usually see that in the rink. In the rink, I'm pretty good at scouting a goalie, but on video, I can't tell that. And on the other end, Caleb Bentz is also a really good goalie. I believe he was first team all-conference in the Middle Border Conference for Somerset. Very good season. He had a very good season last year for Somerset. They don't have a high-powered offense. Regis, you saw just, in the semifinal, was that like a 7-6 game against Baldwin Woodville? Somerset only cracked them twice. Somerset does not have a huge high-powered offense. Their leading scorer had 38 points. Second leading had 30. They need that goalie to be there, and Caleb Bentz, he was there for them all year. He had 9-16 on the year with 4 shutouts, so he had a nice season.
I was at Somerset. First time I got to see him was in their semifinal game here, and I was impressed with the team, and to me it seemed their team was able to get back on defense and not allow easy shots on the goalie, which is what as a coach, you're always hoping your team, is getting back there for. And we know that, Springs is great at keeping their opponents pressured and the shots coming from the outside.
And everybody talks about how fast Brady Welsh is, and he is fast. Noah Pickert might be the fastest high school hockey player in Wisconsin I have ever seen. They didn't even finish with anything, but he made a couple rushes up against the ice in Oregon in the sectional final where he grabbed the puck down, by the net, and he was in their zone in no time. It's ridiculous. He is just blazing fast. And when you have that kind of speed and production from the blue line, it does a lot. And, we've said, they're the defending D2 state champions. They played last year's defending D1 state champions and beat them. They beat USM, who is currently the number 1 seed in the D1 bracket, just a couple of weeks ago. Avenging I believe it's their only loss on the season. They might have another one in there. They're very good. They are graduating 7 of their 9 top leading scorers. They're graduating before everybody complains about private school Division II blah blah blah. They're graduating like everybody. Next year they might still be a very good team. All their underclassmen who aren't seeing ice time right now because their upperclassmen are just insanely good might all be great too, but they're graduating a lot of players, their top scoring.
Yeah, but you remember Brady Welsh when first time they came to state, he was a freshman. They made it his freshman year. So, they didn't make it sophomore year, but junior year they win it all, and another crack at it in senior year. So you knew this was going to be a good group coming up for a couple of years.
Yep, and I believe his freshman year they made it to the title game back in the old single division state tournament. So I believe they made it to the championship game before they lost in 2018. Or, yeah. So who you got?
It's hard to go against Fond du Lac Springs. It just is. I mean, they're the top dog. Until somebody beats them, they're going to be the top dog. And they're good at all three facets of the game.
Yes.
I got to see them once this year, and I came away like, wow, that was something. But if they play like when I did get a chance to see them, they're going to be pretty good, and they're going to, they'll probably be playing on Saturday.
Well, I think Superior ends up winning against Lakeland, and then Bondy Springs in theirs, and then I think it's Springs coming home with his back-to-back titles.
I honestly have no idea who to pick between Superior and Lakeland. I don't. I like Superior's goalie, Jamin Durfee. I think he's a very good goalie. His numbers on the season don't look great, but I mean, he had to play Hermantown and Duluth East, and that is going to factor into your numbers when you're playing Hermantown, who is usually ranked number 1 in Minnesota's lower division, and Duluth East, who is usually in the top 10 in their upper division. I haven't looked at Minnesota's rankings this year since they really just started playing. His number is a little skewed, and Superior got blowed up by Eau Claire North in their first game of the season when North already had like 13 games under their belt. So it's kind of hard to look at their numbers that way, but I like Jamin Durfee, their goalie. Scoring, Superior, they claw back and they're scrappy. On the other hand, Lakeland has Max Toyjala, a Team Wisconsin player who every time he scores a point, he is setting a new record for Lakeland High School. He is their all-time leading point scorer, and he's been doing it for a while. And they've got, he wasn't the one doing all the scoring against Rhinelander. They were getting contributions from everywhere. He had 35 points on the season, but Joe Beta had 32. Another guy with 26, another guy with 15. Their goalie had a 9.16 on the season. So, they're also looking pretty good, and their goalie's only a sophomore. So, we should see them again in the future. Their goalie had 42 saves in their 5-1 win over Rhinelander in the sectional final. So that's legit. So I have no idea what's going to happen between Superior and Lakeland. That said, I can't pick against Springs to win it all. They won it all last year, and they made it look pedestrian in the process, and they didn't lose anything that would make me think that's going to change.
Okay.
So on to the girls. Eau Claire area, number 1, originally from Section 1, newly of Section 3. USM Wildcats are number 4 at the bottom side of the bracket. In the middle of the bracket, the Storm, number 2, and the CFM Sabers, who we just talked to their coach, at number 3. So, who you got? What do you see, Del? These are your teams?
Well, you look at that, first game, it's going to be Chippewa Falls, Menominee against the Storm. And as we said, they played late December, but as you pointed out, that was a 16-game layoff. And I watched that game yesterday. Actually, I watched both games yesterday. Had them both up on the screen at the same time. And the game against the Storm against the Stars, I kept looking for the Stars to make that comeback, but the Storm did what we've always seen the Storm do. They packed in on that defensive zone and just played great and came out with a win. And as Coach Menard pointed out, and you asked him, is why more teams don't do what they can to tie down that top skater. And Zillish had a lot of plays, but Chloe Lemke just had a heck of a game yesterday. And I think it's going to be a very tight game, and I think the way the Storm are playing, I had them picked as, when I made my predictions as being the number 1 seed here, and they ended up as the number 2. And then Eau Claire Stars in the second game, I can't argue with them getting the number 1 seed. They're going to be a tough team, and USM, while they're a very good team, nice win streak. I'm looking at it being Star Storm advancing in this to the play on Saturday, and I think you're going to have a coin flip as to who's going to come out of that one. And I honestly don't know who to pick for the championship on that one, and I think I'm actually going to lean towards the Storm in that.
If you'd have asked me 3 weeks ago between the ECA Stars and USM, I'd have said ECA in a walk. Now, after watching their 2 games, because I watched both of ECA's playoff games, and I watched part of both of USM's playoff games. I'm not so confident in it. ECA, based on what they've done this season, shouldn't have played as tight a games as they played against Black River Falls and Wisconsin Valley Union. Based on everything you saw from all of those teams this season, those games should not have been as close as they were. And USM ended their season, we talked, the surprise of the Storm beating the Fox City Stars after losing to them 5-1 last time, coming back and winning 5-1 this time. USM ended their season with a 2-0 win over the Fox City Stars. I believe Michaela Zilish is the best girls hockey player in the state of Wisconsin. And both of those teams managed to shut her down and win their games. And because of that and the way the ECA Stars played their 2 playoff games, and I mean no disrespect to the Wisconsin Valley Union or Black River Falls, the Union especially, they're a very good under-the-radar team. Dan Bauer is doing a great job. But I think USM can. They are certainly capable of eating the ECA Stars in that first game. And like I said, I'm not thrilled with the way ECA is playing right now. They're winning, and they should be winning. But if they were still in Section 1, I don't know that they would be in the state tournament right now. I don't think they played that well in the playoffs.
But that USM game against Arrowhead, I mean, that was a team that was down 2-0, came back and made it 2-1 on a power play goal. The second goal that Arrowhead had scored was a shorthanded goal. Tied it up late in the third period, and then ended up having to go into the third overtime period and ended up with the win. And I go, that comes down to, tenacity on their part to fight back from the 2-goal deficit and force it into the overtime. And then, both teams had their chances in overtime. And isn't that the one that you and I were watching, Junior, that I thought that the USM was going to put it away earlier, and the goalie made a heck of a save? And
yes.
Then, it was 2 in a row.
It was a breakaway, I believe, and she stopped it. And then the last goal that USM got was on a turnover. Arrowhead made a turnover in the offensive zone, and a girl was able to walk. I posted the video of it on our Twitter, but is able to walk in all alone. And that's never good.
But I haven't gotten to see the ECA Stars play this year. Chippewa this weekend was the first time I got to see them play. But I mean, a Fusion team that battled back all year long, and they split during the season, and they actually controlled that game. I mean, it was down to a 1-goal lead a couple different times, but they played very well and won that game, and no doubt deserved that win. And honestly, I think if you can make a case for any of the 4 teams, I think, to win it all. in this.
And
one.
just to be clear, my issue with the ECA Stars isn't like their effort or anything like that. I think they're playing really well. They have problems putting the puck in the net. Against Black River Falls, they took 52 shots and scored 3 goals. Yes, Sidney Magnuson is a very good goalie, but 52 shots and 3 goals is not a great shooting percentage. Against the Union, it was not quite so. It was 35 shots, but still, I don't know. I don't like their scoring. I still, so that game for me is a toss up. On the other end, Chippewa Falls really handed it to the Storm last time they played, but like we said, they had a 16-day layoff, so that's hard to say. That's like I completely ignore Superior's first game of the season. They lost 7-1 to Eau Claire North, but it was Superior's first game of the season, and Eau Claire Memorial or North had already played like a dozen games, so that's not gonna, that doesn't count.
On the Storm side, they have Maddox Federici, who's a defenseman, and she has a heck of a game, and Samantha Federici's forward on that team. And Samantha, listening to that game yesterday, the announcers, and watching it, it's still hard to see on the video, a lot of what's going on down in front of the net and everything else. But Samantha seems to be right there and tipping pucks, and battling there. But then when you look at Chippewa Falls, you got Sydney Polzine, who's right there, and getting votes as, one of the top players in the state of the forwards and everything. And so, both teams have their players, and I'm expecting 2 good semifinal games. I'm just sorry I'm not going to be able to see them because I'm going to be on the road.
Who's your champion?
I think I'm going with the Storm.
I am going with the Sabers. MJ?
You know what? I haven't got to watch a whole lot of girls hockey this year, to be perfectly honest with you. So my thing, I'll just throw it out the window because I couldn't really tell you. But if I had to guess one, just listening to you guys, I would say the state champion is going to be between the Sabers and the Storm.
Well, they're in the first game, so one of those teams, whoever wins the 2-3 matchup is going to win state. That's your prediction?
I haven't seen anything all year. I'm going to guess.
Okay.
It's what you guys took.
Yep, that's true.
Yep.
I would be remiss. I would be remiss if I didn't point out that Alicia Smith has a .947 save percentage on the regular season.
Goodness.
For ECA, 938 if you factor in the playoffs. So she's probably, stats-wise, the best goalie in the field. So they've got that going for them. I think all 3 of these games, they're all 3. Yeah, all 3, the 2 semifinals in the championship game, I don't think anybody's going to score 5 goals in the field. I don't think anybody scores 5 goals in a game. You're going to see some 4-3s, some 3-2s, 2-1s. We're not going to be in danger of a running time state tournament game, which none of us like to see.
No.
All right. D1. The thing MJ's here for.
D1. Boy.
At
what
the
do we
top,
got for
USM number 1 against 4 Verona, and then second game is number 2 Hudson and number 3 Notre Dame Academy. This one was very easy for me to seed when I was looking at the predictions. USM beat Hudson beat Notre Dame, and Verona was 12-6. So 1, 2, 3, 4.
Let me tell you something about Verona. They've been under the radar all year.
Well, that's because they didn't start until January 5th.
Well, even then, they were playing Waha hockey. But I'll tell you what, they've still got the pieces there to win it all. And they've, you got that 12-6 record. Don't let that fool you. They got all the pieces, and they have the main piece. They got goaltending. They got Caden Grant. That young man can shut down about any team, and he's played a very solid season again this year. And our goalie of the year, I'm sure he's going to gather a lot of votes. But I really like him. And Verona, so they're a number 4 seed, but don't let him kid you.
Well, I mean, once you're in the D1 state tournament, now that there's just the 4 divisions and anything, there's not a Patsy division anymore. Not that there has been the last few years in the old single division format, but there's not a Patsy division anymore. So every team that's going to get to the D1 state tournament is going to be legit from here on out, I think.
Well, especially at the semifinal level.
Yeah. So, we're not saying anything bad. I will say that I watched Verona's game against Waunakee. I think Verona has a couple issues with discipline that they need to deal with. It's not often that you see a team take a 5-minute major penalty and still be on the power play when the next puck drops. And that's what happened for Waunakee. One of their guys got a boarding penalty, and Verona took 2 stupid roughing penalties after the play ended, so that Waunakee, despite getting a major, ended up on a 4-on-3 power play for the next 2 minutes. I mean, I understand when there's a boarding play and it looks like a guy might get hurt. He wasn't. He got up. He was okay. That you want to go in and defend your guy, but you can't take 2 penalties in that situation in a playoff game. You can't do that. And that's not unusual. I mean, we've seen that from Verona in the recent memory with this group coming through the years. They take penalties that they shouldn't, and we would like to not see that. And we saw USM against KMMO, all the goals in that sectional final were scored on the power play. USM has Ethan Mann, who is a Badgers commit. They have Els, they have Iqbali, they have guys who can put the puck in you if you put the puck in on you. Obviously, they just beat Hudson, who looked invincible. So Verona, you can kind of take those penalties when Caden Grant is in your net, ready to bail you out, but you don't want to. You need to stay. You don't want to
go to. You don't want to go to that well too often. No.
No, and it's something we've seen in the state tournament many times where teams that should be evenly matched end up not being because one of them takes too many penalties. And
look at the championship game last year in D1. I mean, how many penalties did Verona take? Put Notre Dame on the power play. Notre Dame had a very good power play, and they got stuffed with Caden Grant there.
Yeah, Caden. I mean, but it's hard to rely on your goalie like that.
Yeah,
all the time. And I think, to Verona's credit, part of the reason they take as many penalties as they do, it's the same reason Chippewa Falls takes a lot of penalties. They play an up-tempo hockey game. Aggressive. They're not content to let the puck come back to them. They're going to the puck all the time and they're attacking. And it's fun to watch, but when you play that way, you take penalties. There was the penalty fest for Verona and Waunakee because both teams played that way. Both teams were playing up tempo and aggressive, and when you play that way, there's going to be penalties. Notre Dame does not play an up tempo aggressive hockey game. They let plays unfold. They let things build. USM does not play particularly up tempo aggressive hockey games. They let things unfold and build. So does Hudson. Verona is easily on the puck the most aggressive team in the field, which is both. It's a double-edged sword. It means that they can get out on you quick and they can pile goals on you quick. They can surprise you, but it also means that there's going to be mistakes and there's going to be turnovers. And what helps them and what helps Chippewa Falls in general is that they have backstops who can deal with those turnovers when you make them.
Now, in that game yesterday between USM and KMMO, there were a total of 12 penalties called in that game. Each team ended up with a 5-minute major, and
I meant to total that up today. I meant to total up all the major penalties that have been called in the tournament so far today.
And actually, one of those major penalties was a slashing major down behind the KMMO net, and the other one was a boarding major, which we discussed a little bit yesterday when it happened. There was the retaliation from the one team, and then the other player from the team got called for misconduct on it. So, but there was, that's another one. And actually, the gentleman that was calling the game, doing the announcing of it, which it was the USM athletic director, and Cal Roadhouse were doing the announcing, and they were both still saying, USM needs to stay out of the penalty box if they wanted to advance on to state and everything. And, pointing out exactly what you are, Junior, about Verona. And that was one of the things that was being pointed out in this game yesterday. But as you said, 3 goals scored in this game. All 3 were on the power play. And Peter Ells, I watched him in that game yesterday, and he's got some speed going down the side, cutting through players, for the loose puck and everything. But KMMO, I would be neglecting if I didn't mention DeSantos playing in that game. He heard his name quite often, and he put a lot of pressure on USM, and Jack Schroeder had a heck of a game. He had 25 saves on 26 shots.
And I've watched multiple games from all of these teams now this year, and I will say this for Verona. They have a killer instinct that the other 3 teams don't have in the same way. Verona is like a shark. When they smell blood in the water, they will go at you. They did it to Waunakee. It was basically a big second period that did Waunakee in. Waunakee had to kill off a bunch of power plays in the middle part of the second period, and they did it. But by the end of the period, they were drained because they had to kill off so many Verona power plays. And when that happened, Verona just pounced on them, and they have a killer instinct. The other 3 teams are all steady. Verona is aggressive.
Verona also has a shutdown defenseman by the name of Nathan Jurens, and he's as good as any in the state. That's somebody to watch.
I think all 4 of these teams, I haven't started actually tabulating the votes. The coaches are sending the votes in for our Davis Drewiski Award. I would not be surprised if all 4 of these teams have a finalist.
No, that's
whether
true.
It's, Nathan Jurens, Michael McEntee, Max Giblin. Max Giblin, besides being a shutdown defenseman for Hudson, is also a prolific scorer when they need him to be. USM, I can't remember all their players off the top of my head. But yeah. Well, I know you've got to take off, MJ.
I got about 5 more minutes.
Okay.
I've been extended.
On the other side of the bracket, we have Notre Dame against Hudson. I believe they played earlier this year, Junior?
They did. Hudson won that game handily. And it was kind of like, you remember what Bob Bradovich was talking about last week. The first time Hudson and Eau Claire Memorial played, everything Hudson did was perfect. Every tape was pass to pass. Eau Claire Memorial had no answer for them. The second time Eau Claire Memorial and Hudson played, Hudson was not quite as perfect, and Eau Claire Memorial made a game of it. The Hudson Notre Dame game was one of those games where Hudson was perfect, and expecting that out of high school kids is unrealistic. So I would not expect another, I believe it was like 6-1 repeat of what they had last time.
I think Notre Dame was missing one of their top players in that game, but just like you were saying, though, I did watch that whole game, Hudson and Notre Dame, and Hudson was just perfect. You're right. They're perfect in that game, and it's so hard to play a perfect game like that, but on that day they did, and they're gonna have their hands full more this time.
That's the game that, until the end of the season when they lost to USM and Edgewood, that's the game that cemented Hudson as the number 1 team in the state in our rankings for
absolutely
that period. Because Hudson outshot Notre Dame Academy, who was I believe the previous number 1 at the time, 32-14. Nobody in the last 8 years has outshot Notre Dame Academy 32-14. So to expect that again, I don't think you can look at that game as a factor in the game they're going to play on Thursday.
Oh, those 2 coaches know it's going to be totally different.
Who do you got, MJ?
Oh, man. I'm going to take Hudson only because they're at home. What I got to see last night of Notre Dame Academy, Boy, they really moved the puck well on the power play. My goodness. But, you know, I really think that may be the only difference in this one. Both these teams are very good. You know, they're good at all three facets of the game. And I just think that Hudson, maybe being at home, having Notre Dame have to make the long trip across state on a weeknight, that may be just enough to get them over the hump.
Yeah, I've got to imagine that like Notre Dame is not going to school on Thursday. Like they're not taking a half day and then riding the bus over to get off the bus and play. That can't you can't possibly let bus legs be a factor in this state semifinal. So I got to imagine they're not going to be in school at all on Thursday. But yeah, I don't know. I like. I mean, Hudson was number one for so long, and I think those two losses made them realize that they're not invincible, which is, you know, these are high school kids. You know, for the most part, they are technically children. They need to be reminded of that every now and then, and I think that they have been. And I think it'll be Hudson, but it's not going to be 6-1, 32-14 in shots like it was the last two times these teams played. That's not happening. It's going to be 3-2, 2-1, 4-3 at the high end.
The one other point I wanted to make when we were talking about Verona, I thought in their sectional the only team who could really challenge them was Madison Edgewood, and they didn't get a chance because of the COVID situation. I thought that would be the one team that would match up well with them, but that wasn't the case because.
I mean, I thought that Sauk Prairie and Waunakee actually played them pretty well. I mean, I know that on the scoreboard it was 4-1 and 5-2, but neither of those games was really that far apart. I think Waunakee was largely done in by. And you've heard me say this before. I hate when teams play like a passive penalty kill, because, as I've said many times tonight, these are high school kids. They're not perfect. So if you push them and you're aggressive on the penalty kill, you'll force them into mistakes. Well, Waunakee did that, and they just ended up with them taking more penalties. And I think that's really what did them in. It was the second period that did Waunakee in against Verona, and in the second period, Waunakee took 4 penalties in pretty even succession, so that they were on penalty kills for like 10 minutes, or 8 minutes, basically straight. And that really did them in. I think they played Verona very well. Sauk Prairie played Verona very well. They just couldn't crack Caden Grant. I would have loved to see Edgewood and Verona, but there's no guarantee that Edgewood would have beat Waunakee. The Waunakee that I saw play against Verona played better than you would have expected for whatever seed they actually were, a 5 seed. They didn't look like a 5 seed to me. Maybe they looked like a 5 seed in Section 1. They didn't look like a 5 seed in Section 3. They looked really good. And I think part of their seed came from the fact that they also didn't start until January 5th. Before that, they were Waha, so people didn't know what to expect.
Well, who do you got in the USM Verona game?
Based on their sectional finals, based on their sectional finals, I would have actually taken Verona, because I just thought that I like the way they play aggressive, and they're not like the other 3 teams in the tournament. I think they take more penalties than they probably should, but that comes from their aggression. But USM, KMMO was, when it comes to scoring, they're largely a one-line team, but USM still is a 2-1 game where they needed 2 power play goals to crack them. So based on their sectional finals, I would have taken Verona, but based on their whole season worth of work, I'm going to take USM. USM, they knocked off the invincible Hudson team. They beat Springs earlier in the year, even though Springs avenged that loss later. They're a very solid team up and down. They bend at worst against USM. You will make them bend, but you will never make them break. I think there's more vulnerabilities in Verona's game than there are in USM, so I'm going to take USM.
I'm going to take Verona just because goaltending. And that's nothing against the goaltender for USM, but I think that Caden Grant is just playing at this high level right now.
Well, he is Team Wisconsin's goalie. I mean,
well, he's Team Wisconsin goalie, but he's also got a good defenseman in front of him. He's got a good D crew altogether in front of him. So you're going to get limited on the number of grade A chances you're going to get. So I'm going to say that I'm guessing Verona in this one. On the road.
I'm going to go USM, but I think it's going to be a 1-goal game. And I think it's going to be a USM Hudson state final. And I actually think Hudson's going to avenge that 5-1 loss that USM put on them at the end of the regular season.
I think if Hudson and USM meet in the final, Hudson is going to throw some checks early in the game to remind USM that they beat them 5-1 and that they're coming for them. But I also think it's going to be Hudson and USM in the final. And despite the 2 losses they took at the end of the season against USM and Edgewood, I think Hudson is the best team in the state. They just
we'll find out soon enough.
Yeah, we will, because this is all academic and meaningless. Who cares what we think? That's why they play the games.
We're just bulletin board material.
We are bulletin board material. Basically that means that I just inspired the Eau Claire area Stars to score like 10 goals.
Way to go.
Because I think they are an excellent hockey team that can't put the puck in the net with enough consistency. Yeah.
All right, you got my 10 cents worth tonight.
I just want to say, we all know this was a rough year, and I honestly feel bad for the 3 teams that their season came to an end in the playoffs due to COVID and stuff. You didn't even get to lose it on the ice, and sorry to hear that. Good luck to all 12 teams that is still playing, and I hope you guys have a great state tournament.
Yeah, I also
Same here.
For the 3 teams that had to drop out of the playoffs, Waupun, Sun Prairie, and Edgewood, that's brutal. That's brutal. That and I'm not gonna say it's better or worse than the teams that didn't get to play WIA hockey at all, but to actually be allowed to play, your season has started, you get into the playoffs, and then all of a sudden you're done. That's tough. So and I do feel for all those kids, especially the seniors on those teams. I mean, who knows what could have happened. I would have liked to see Waupun's goalie, Tyler Frummels, I believe, put up like 60 saves in a game, because his numbers on the season are ridiculous for a team that did not have a lot of success. I was looking at it earlier in the year after they got eliminated. Does anybody remember Bryce Kamenek, Eau Claire North? Everybody loved Bryce Kamenek from Eau Claire North because he faced just a ridiculous amount of shots. The Waupun goalie faced as many shots this season as Bryce Kamenek did in his busiest season, with a better save percentage and a much lower goals against average. I would have liked to see him play a playoff game or 2.
That's it for me, guys. I got to run.
Yep, that's it for everybody. You can sign us out.
Okay. Good luck to all the teams. When are we going to talk again? When are we going to do another show?
Next Sunday.
Next Sunday, after it's all said and done?
Sure.
Okay. Good enough. You've been listening to This Week in Wisconsin Prep Hockey. Boom. All right, guys, I got to run.